Conversations with Ed Marshall is underwritten by EMA Consultants and Speakers Bureau, SafePoint GPS, Delgado Community College, OTP Poetry Anthology, and Global Profit Strategies.
Award-winning broadcast journalist Ed Marshall asks the tough questions you want answered. Informative, soul-stirring, one-on-one interviews about matters that affect our lives in this region we call home. Here now with Conversations is Ed Marshall.
Hello and welcome to a Conversation with Ed Marshall. Well, residents and people around the world are saying goodbye to the 56th mayor of New Orleans, Moon Landrieu. The former mayor, whose early stand against segregation launched a political career that just took off, and it was on the forefront of the sweeping change in the race. And in 1970, Landrieu was the city's first mayor that included blacks in the administration. Landrieu credited his wife, Verna, with nudging him to get into politics, and of course his black Loyola University classmate, including Dr. Norman Francis and others, who would become Xavier University's dean and preside for opening his eyes, to say. To win his first mayoral term, though, Landrieu assembled a coalition of white liberals and African Americans they said, over the naysayers, he's going to win this. And Landrieu's political stance grew, and the talents he wanted to use for black people, it became more prolific. And we are honored to have today one of the first black city executives with us on the show. He's actually a part of New Orleans history himself. So I welcome to the studio my friend, and I'm honored to say I'm sitting here with a part of black history here in New Orleans, Mr. Robert Bob Tucker, better known as Bob Tucker.
Thank you, Ed.
Bob,
and you've been my friend over all these years.
Oh, yeah. We've been friends a long time.
Yeah.
But Bob, walk us back to that time. Take us back to the late 60s and early 70s in New Orleans. What was the environment like?
It was a turbulent period nationwide, but it was particularly turbulent in New Orleans because, notwithstanding the fact that our administration, that we won that very tumultuous mayor's race, we still had barriers that had to be overcome in New Orleans. We worked, for example, to put together a Public Accommodations Act, which would formalize the fact that we didn't have to have all of these situations where white and colored water fountains and white and colored restrooms, and where black women couldn't try on hats in the big stores, homes in Maison Blanche and all that stuff. So he brought a new mentality to the city. It was not without some trials and tribulations from people who were resistant and didn't want it, but that didn't stop Moon, as I said before. There was no forbidden territory for Moon in terms of making the city a better town. But those 60s were tough. It was a tough period in those days, and it was tough governing, and it was tough particularly for minorities, as we had been subjected to all of the stuff that came with living in the segregated South. And Moon said, I'm going to change that. And in this particular instance, he started at home and said, there are no blacks above the mop and broom level in City Hall. We're going to change all that. So he opened the doors and he welcomed in not only African Americans and browns and gays and people of a different persuasion and women, people who had been locked outside of the circle of participation for this town.
And people who brought a lot of economic impact to
exactly, and talent. And so they were all meaningfully involved in whatever their particular roles were in City Hall at that time. These were not, look and be pretty type roles. These were not show horse roles. These were workhorse roles.
Right.
And Moon was the moving force behind it.
Tell me the story about your daddy was a preacher.
Yeah.
And I think he went to your dad's church or something, and that's how he.
Yeah, what happened was that a year or so, I guess it was 68, we decided to commemorate Dr. King's death by getting together a group of particularly African Americans who understood what Dr. King meant to us. And so we met in the old French hospital on Orleans Avenue, which is no longer there, but that was our meeting place, the National Urban League office, local Urban League office. And so we had an interesting coalition of people. We had Black Panther Party members, we had African American preachers, we had Catholic nuns, we had Republican New Africa activists. And it was an amalgamation of the different approaches to liberation. So we argued for about 3.5 hours over whose method was the more effective method. And then when we started into the 4th hour, we began to argue about something that made sense. And that was the mule that was going to pull the caisson. That was a replica of Dr. King. And one guy said, man, there's a mule back in town, but you got to use a 2x4 on that mule. So we kind of moved from that to, well, I know a mule, the guy said, that is kind of tame, and he'll probably work for us. So we agreed on that. So that march started from Orleans Avenue, went to the foot of Canal Street.
Wow. And
then circled back to City Hall. We had 10 non-negotiable demands, any 9 of which we would have negotiated if anybody had listened to us. So we had sent certified letters to all of the elected officials, city council, mayor, et cetera, in City Hall. Nobody showed up, but as we were depositing those demands at the WLAE-TV of Worms, I looked over and I saw a guy standing between the Breezeway and Civil District Court. And he didn't say anything. He just stood there, he watched. It was Moon Landrieu. So following that march, my daddy, who was an AME preacher, Bethlehem Church down in Lower Ninth Ward, a couple of weeks later called me and said, this fellow Moon Landrieu called, he wants to meet you. So Moon and I met, we talked, and I came in and I did some community organizing, some writing for him, and the marriage was made there. And we campaigned and worked the streets and suites, and finally came out with an election victory.
And what I liked about Moon, Mayor Landrieu, is that he let people know, I'm not just looking to put blacks and whoever in these roles, I'm looking for talent.
Exactly.
He said, if they got talent, he said, we are missing out on all this great talent in the city.
You're right on.
You know?
And it was a situation where you could not rise above and reach your expectations as a young African American or female or gay person in this town because of these artificial barriers. And Moon said, we're gonna move that now. Yeah. And he meant it. He took the Confederate flag down in the city council. Yeah. that was a dagger into the hearts of some folks in this town. Yeah. You know, we're moving the Confederate flag, God. So, but he was no shrinking violet. And he had been a baseball pitcher at Loyola. Yeah. And he had a temper, but he was able to govern his temper. And one of the situations that happened, Ed, was that about, I guess, 8 or 9 months after we had been elected, President Nixon's term ran coterminously with ours. He was elected in 1969. Mm-hmm. So, Republican president, Democratic mayor. So he sent a team in here to look at how the city was expending and utilizing federal funds. So they came into Moon's office, and I was sitting there with Moon. And as the conversation ensued, it was clear that they were not there to review, they were there to investigate. And Moon, I could see Moon's temperature rising. And ultimately, Moon threw him out of his office. And I just sat there in amazement. And after the door slammed with them leaving, I said, Moon, these people control our destiny with federal dollars. And I said, you just threw him out of here. And he began to slowly chuckle. He said, anger is one of the arrows that you keep in your quiver. to be deployed when you need it. Not emotional anger,
Right.
but tactical anger. It was a valuable lesson. I mean, all of us who were around Moon, we were learning
Yeah.
and we were exchanging. He used to like to politically and intellectually spar.
Right.
You know, and he was open, and he didn't have the attitude that I'm the mayor and I know everything.
Right, right.
What can I learn from you?
Right. And under his administration, the Superdome started,
Yeah.
the French market
Yep.
blossomed. I mean, just so many things happened
Right.
For the city. It's just phenomenal that people may not know
You
about.
recall that in those years when we were getting ready to build the Dome Stadium, we'd gotten, with Moon's help, the financing from the state and stitched together a funding package. The intent on the part of some was to put it in New Orleans East. And Moon stood up on his hind legs and said, no, that's not going to work. He said, we need to put it downtown. And ultimately, Moon's wisdom proved to be
That's right.
the more successful approach to it. Those are nothing but old, dilapidated warehouses along Poitras Avenue. And so doing that allowed us over time to turn Poitras Avenue into the Fifth Avenue of New Orleans,
Yeah.
with those high-rise buildings and the jobs and the economic development of hotels.
Yeah.
It all emanated from making the right location decision. And that was Moon. If he felt right about something, he was not going to loosely relinquish it simply because other forces, the governor at that time or
Right.
certain state senators said, well, no, it's not right. Moon said, this is where it ought to go.
And that's where it became a postcard to this day.
Amen. Exactly. Exactly.
We got just a couple more minutes, but I wanted you to take a page out of a lost page with the Black Panthers, because that was going on when
Yeah.
you all were in. And unlike a lot of other cities where there was, just mass chaos, the city and the Black Panthers sat down together and came up with an agreement on how to handle things, particularly for the people who were in poverty.
Yeah, it was not always that way. What happened was that the Panthers had been working in an organizational sense in the Desire Housing Project. There's a great book on this called Showdown in Desire by Arissa Aaron that characterizes everything with pictures and what have you. And there was a determination that had been made by, I don't know if it was the housing authority or who, that they were in effect squatters, that they had occupied property belonging to the housing authority owns. And these 8 or 9 Panthers, armed for this confrontation that was about to ensue, said, we're not moving. And the police department said, well, we're going to take you out. So 200 policemen flowed into Desire. I had actually gone and lived down there before all of this happened for about 3 or 4 days with a guy by the name of Henry Fagan. God bless his soul, who's no longer here. And it was terrible. It was water when it rained, water that was polio infested. The kids were swimming in. There were rats the size of cats. There was no drainage, and the people, when they got ready, and to the Panthers' credit, they served almost as an unpaid voluntary arm of municipal services. They took care and guarded the elderly and the poor when they got ready to go to the store to cash their checks. They created a breakfast program for kids. They did sickle cell testing.
Wow.
And they were just taking care of business. So the bottom line was that the police department had determined that they were going to move them out with these 200, and they brought the wall wagon, Big Bessie, from Baton Rouge. So it was a full-fledged military operation. And there were people who understood it, Don Hubbard, Charlie Elway, Cecil Carter, who said, let's see what we can do to prevent any bloodshed. So we intervened, got Moon on the phone. We didn't have cell phones in police headquarters, which somebody suggested I go to, and I said, well, I was in the U.S. military Army, but you didn't hire me as your tactician, Mr. Mayor, so I'm not going to be there advising you on this. I'm going to be down in the neighborhood. And so bottom line was that Moon, to his credit, because he listened and he understood, told the cops they had to withdraw.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And they did, and we averted a major, what could have been a very bloody situation in the city of New Orleans.
I could talk to you forever, but I'm out of time. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Ed.
All right.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
You do a great job in helping to educate folks on all of these issues that affect us all.
Appreciate it. And we say goodbye to our 92-year-old friend, Moon
Yes,
Andrew.
indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes, he will be missed.
Yeah, our loss and heaven's gain. He's
That's right.
one
Okay.
tremendous person.
That's right. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Well, when we come back, we're going to share an experience with you from someone else, from a more of a neighborhood perspective. So stay with us, who knew the Landrews well. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back. You know, folks in New Orleans are known to spend time off with their mama and them and their friends. In this particular case, it was a little black girl playing with the white boys and girls down the block from her. Well, that young black girl grew up to be a woman that went on to become a state senator in the Louisiana legislature. We welcome our dear friend and community activist, Ms. Ann Duplessis, to the program via Zoom. Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're so sorry that the mayor has passed on, but I know you're very good friends with Mary and Mitch and everybody over there. What was it like growing up with the Landrews, basically a stone's throw away in the neighborhood?
Yeah, it was amazing, actually. We used to call it, it was just a neighborhood that I don't think we'll ever see again. We lived, actually, my family lived one house down from the Landrews, and it was a community where all of the parents, including Miss Landrew and Mayor Landrew, would come out on a Saturday and a Sunday and watch the kids play. The guys the kids, the Landrews, used to play football with the guys, and the girls would be on somebody's porch playing Barbie dolls. And either my mom was on the porch watching, over the kids in the neighborhood as they played, or Miss Landrew would be out gardening, watching the kids as they played in the neighborhood. And it was always a really, I guess, just a safe, family environment.
Yeah. Do you think seeing their service in politics as you were growing up in some way helped turn the trajectory of your life toward public service?
It's funny you say that, because before I even knew what was happening with regards to my introduction to politics, we were, as kids, we had a neighborhood that, in retrospect, now that I can remember, were full of politicians. We had judges that lived, in the neighborhood. Actually, right next door to me was Judge WLAE. And so whenever someone was running for office, all the neighborhood kids would be required, to go and hand out leaflets throughout the neighborhood and throughout the various blocks. And so before I even knew that I was, in politics as a kid.
Yeah. But I have to ask, are you still there? Can you hear me? I can't let you leave, though, and I know you have a meeting, but I can't let you leave without telling our viewers this great story about a rainy day in the old neighborhood when you were a little girl, and it was raining and you were going to school. So you take it from there.
So you know, some of the really great memories, and there were many memories that we had, or that I had, of being neighbors with the Landrews and friends with, I mean, I was more closer to Madeline and Mitch. But, you know, as a young child in elementary school, we were going to neighborhood schools, public schools. And the neighborhood public school that I attended was Wilson, which was about 6 or 7 blocks away from, you know, from where I lived. And one morning, you know, when we walked to school, like all kids did, and one morning it was raining, and I was walking to school in the rain, and Moon Landrew, you know, he used to get their home, he used to have a limousine, I guess that's what they would pick them up in, or a big black car that would come and pick him up in the morning to, I guess, take him to work. But one morning he passed by and he actually saw me walking in the rain. Of course, he knew who I was. I was one of his children too, right? And so he stopped the car and he says, "Hey, do you want to ride to school?" And I went, "Yeah." So I'm in the car and got a ride to school, and all the kids were like, "Oh my God, you're Andrew." Well, I realized something. I said, you know, it was about maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, and so I would like wait every morning until that exact time, hoping that Mayor Landrew would pass and see me walking and offer me a ride to school. And every now and then, when he could, he did. But you know, that was something that I will never forget. They were dear, dear friends. They really were like our parents, just as our parents chastised the guys and the kids when needed to while we were playing. It was just a really lot of great memories. And you know, the one thing that really also sticks out to me is that during the time when we were kids, and the kids and the families just played together and worked together within the neighborhood, Moon Landrew spent time. It wasn't, I mean, he was there. He played football, and we didn't know him as the mayor, right? We knew him as just another dad out with the kids, and so we didn't know them as the mayor. And Miss Landrew was just a beautiful, or is just a beautiful person that played in her garden and took care of her kids and was home and was there. And that's kind of what we knew of them. It wasn't the politics side.
That's great. That's great.
So, you know, I mean, I think that it was just a testament to him and to them, and just the people that they raised and that went on to do and are still doing awesome things, such as you know, Senator Landrew and Mitch Landrew, and you know, Madeline, my dear friend. So I appreciate.
Quite a dynasty that started just from him wanting to do the right thing for all people of New Orleans.
Absolutely.
Senator Duplessis, former Senator Duplessis, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you so much, and we love you. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okie doke. All righty, when we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with a little more news about some things that are going on, but stay with us. We'll be right back.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
And we would be remiss not to send prayers across the pond to England, where the country is mourning the death of Queen Elizabeth of England. Her son Charles will inherit the throne. But before we go, we want to mention some good news. After 2 years of coping with the coronavirus, the West Bank Heritage Festival, an initiative of New Growth Economic Development Association and Jefferson Parish Councilman Byron Lee, was revived this past Labor Day weekend. The free outdoor event featured live entertainment to stimulate economic growth and exposure for musicians and businesses while celebrating the rich heritage of the West Bank. And Delgado Community College pays homage to Isaac Delgado for his generous contribution 100 years ago of land, which led to the education of thousands of students who are now giving back with their talents to the economic growth of our community. The school celebrates with a special donation gala at the World War II Museum on September 23rd. Contact dcc.edu for more information. Well, we thank you for keeping us company. Until next month, stay in peace, not pieces. We'll see you.